Today, I have with me Dr. Crystal Collier, a PhD, LPCS. She's a therapist, prevention researcher, educator, and person in long-time recovery who specializes in adolescent brain development, prevention programming, addiction, family of origin work, and parent coaching. She is also the author of the award-winning Neuro Whereabouts book series, including the Neuro Whereabouts Guide for Parents, Your Moves Matter for Teens, and the Know Your Neuro Adventures of Growing Brain Children's series. Dr. Collier is also the founder of Know Your Neuro Inc., a 501c3 nonprofit that delivers brain-based prevention and social emotional training to K through 12 youth, families, and schools. Now, that is a wealth of accomplishments.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm so honored to have you here with us today. I wanted to speak with you that your work is so impactful. And in the work that we do in violence prevention for domestic and sexual violence, a lot of the conversations I've had have been about the social issue of it. And we discuss risk and red flags and, the things that we do to prevent and to intervene, but understanding the why behind it all, right? When we talk about power and control in team relationships, because that's what this conversation is, who better than someone of your experience and expertise?
Oh, Saran, thank you for saying that. You just made my day. I appreciate it.
No, it's so very true. So our audience is youth 12 to 24 years of age, parents, caregivers, educators, direct service providers, youth with disabilities. We want to, through this campaign of healthy relationships for youth, to increase knowledge of healthy teen relationships, give them the tools to be able to navigate those relationships, promote digital safety, healthy boundaries, and equip parents and in our audience with tools to recognize warnings. But as we're going to discuss today, the why. So when we're developing strategies for prevention, we have a full picture of what it is.
Definitely. Oh, I
So
can't wait.
yay. So we're going to get right into it. So I've shared a lot about you, but is there anything that you like our viewers who don't know you to know about who you are and your work, if you want to share some more?
Oh, I appreciate that. Well, I'm actually going to shout out to one of my interns. So, over the past 3 years, I have worked with 19 fearless, hardworking interns to create Your Moves Matter, which is the infographic uh, a book from my parents' guide. So my parents' guide got a lot of great reviews, but I had kids who were like, but I want one for me. So I didn't want to write it from my perspective as an adult researcher. I wanted young people to have a voice. So chapter 11 is Sana Yakub's chapter. So she translated all of the research from my parent guide and wrote her chapter from a youth perspective. And we
Wow.
went over all the things that she learned from the parent guide and then gathered more data and really relevant research about what kids are going through regarding dating, like what they should know, what they need to know about their growing brain, and some really good boundaries. So I'm going to do some quoting from her chapter.
Good deal. I love that. Love, 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 love it. All right. So when you hear the phrase power and control, what does that actually mean in the context of teen relationships?
So to me, of course I'm thinking of the power and control wheels, which are included in this chapter. And the opposite of equality is having power and control over someone else. But I always see the perpetrator of that as somebody who has a lot of insecurities
Mm.
and has maybe grown up with some poor modeling or some unequal relationships that they've seen in their own society, culture, or family of origin.
Okay. A lot of times, we say that people, and I believe it to be true, people are the sums of their experience, right? And at the core of it is your foundation, your childhood experience, and things like that. When I looked, I'm kind of jumping ahead, but when I was, you know, doing my research on you, and I was just like, wow, she's phenomenal. And you have this work on family of origin, like you mentioned. How does a young person's family of origin influence the way they understand relationships, particularly when it comes to power, control, communication, and consent?
Oh, it's such a great question and it's so important. So I kind of sum it up with this phrase: neurodevelopment is experience dependent. So your brain literally wires based upon what it experiences in your family of origin, culture of origin, religion of origin, society of origin. And
Mhm,
you adapt your thoughts, your feelings, your behavior patterns based upon what's going on in your world. And so, if you grow up in a world where the masculine gender is deferred to, in control, sets the leadership tone of the family, then that's what your brain is going to wire. It's going to create a template for what it means to be a man from that modeling. And so
mhm.
then it just gets repeated.
Right.
Now, the cool part about brain development is that it's plastic. Neuroplasticity means flexibility. You can learn new ways of thinking, feeling, and being. And a lot of young people today find their own values that may be different from their
Right.
family of origin or society of origin, especially immigrant cultures who maybe have been expected to use certain values and norms of their or country of origin, but grew
Mhm.
up here in the US and try
Right.
on lots of different things, which can create conflict. But I think, in my a humble opinion, is that kids should be allowed to try on the values and norms that they think are appropriate for them and the
Right.
family that they're going to once create. And if that aligns with their family or culture of origin, great. If not, then we have to work on how to assimilate and integrate that into one big generational family unit.
Understood. Now, on the other side of that, because a lot of times, when I've heard people attribute their current experience to, maybe past trauma, their adverse childhood experiences, that's why they can't escape the routine that they're in. How do you speak to those people, right? Because if the thought is that, this plus, I can't even get it out, the flexibility that you can make these
Mhm.
adaptations, what would you recommend for our young adults? They're in their 20s, so you're young enough, but it extends way past that,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. That's why I wrote FOO mapping, family of origin mapping, for
Mhm.
young adult and adult clients who want to change the patterns that don't serve them very well.
Right.
If we think about neurodevelopment, between puberty and the age of 25, we're growing so many million little dendrites, connectors. Really, the dendrite is the hardware of learning. So when you're learning a new skill or you're practicing a new or practicing an old skill, you're
Mhm.
growing dendrites that make thicker networks of neurons for that way of thinking, feeling, acting.
Okay.
And so those are harder to change after the age of 25 when plasticity plateaus and starts to go downhill, but we can
Okay.
learn for the rest of our lives.
Okay.
But the first step is awareness. What neuronal network do I have in there? What have I learned about my sexuality, my gender identity? What have I learned about the relationships and whether there's a power and control value, or if it's a more equal or equality value? What have
Okay.
I learned? And do I want to adopt that for myself? And the sooner that a young person decides, okay, this is what I want to practice instead, the better, because then they can take advantage of that neuroplasticity and grow new neuronal networks that will really help when they have relationships of their own.
I like that. I think anybody hearing that can take something away from that and apply it to their lives in a way that if it only makes you think different about what's possible for you, that's a win, right?
Absolutely.
For teens who have grown up witnessing unhealthy relationship dynamics, what should we know? What should they know about their ability to build healthy relationships of their own? Like you just spoke to that, but is there a way to present that message like really plain for an adolescent?
Oh, sure. I definitely think so. What I do with young people when they're just starting to date, or maybe they're in an unhealthy relationship, is I literally have them write down their values first, because a
Mm,
lot of times we don't maybe get that education in our family. I mean,
right.
even when we belong to a religious organization, maybe
Hmm.
we don't actually learn how to apply those values to our
Right.
personal relationships. And to also see what's been modeled to you. What are the traditional roles in your family? And how does power and control integrate into those roles?
Right.
What do you see? And so once you see what you are exposed to, then you can decide. What a lot of us do is we're just exposed. We
Right.
learn it, we cope with it, and then we just repeat as we grow older.
Right.
And a lot of us don't examine our lives and think, okay,
Right.
wait, is there a different way to go? I mean, I literally have an adult client in his late 30s who learned a very specific gender role from mom and dad growing up. And in
Mm-hmm.
his, the mother was the matriarchal one who was in power and control, and the father was the passive, submissive follower of mother. And
Okay.
he doesn't want to adopt that. He wants to adopt something that has more equality, but
Right.
yet what he learned was to be very submissive to women. And many
Mm.
women don't want or like that. They want
Right.
an equal partner. So he's trying to figure out, oh my God, how do I become an equal partner when I learned all these behaviors?
Wow. That's really powerful. Um, when you have like your client, not every person is experiencing healthy relationships at home, right? Outside of the home, because to think that you have reached like your late 30s, right? And that's been your only model, and you do
Mhm.
not want to be in alignment with that. What can roles as teachers, coaches, mentors, or trusted adults play in helping reshape a young person's understanding of what a healthy relationship looks and feels like? Because we all, as a community, have a responsibility to our young people. How can they show up differently so that way, you don't get to 30 something years old and, that's all you
Sure.
have as an
Yes.
example? Yeah.
Well, the first one is expect respect, which is actually a really good
Mm,
curriculum for healthy dating. If you've ever heard of
yes,
that particular, I think that if we respect young people, and I mean, even something as simple as, hey, can I give you a hug? Always asking before you touch someone.
absolutely.
The simple little things like that that show respect for someone else's boundaries, especially as a young person's boundary. And I think adults have so much power in young people's lives because the research shows that if just one adult shows up consistently with warmth and love and limits for a young person, that they can actually thrive as adults. It's when kids don't have that consistency in somebody who really shows up for them that kids get into trouble. And this is really important for young people whose brains are still growing and developing, because if we think about at, let's say, 15 years old, we've got about 40% of our frontal lobe that's developed. That means we have 40% abstract reasoning, impulse control, empathy. That means we can only predict risk about 40% of the time
Got it.
accurately.
Got
And
it.
so this is why we have more young people who are perpetrators and victims of domestic violence, the power and control. And so I'm looking at Sana's chapter, and that as far as perpetrators go, 1 in 14 girls perpetrate dating violence, and 1 in 18 boys.
Wow.
Wow, right? Like when you look at the numbers, it's pretty interesting, and we don't predict that, right? In many
Right.
ways. So it's not just a guy thing. It's not just a gender thing. We see that it is an equal opportunity issue. And so
Absolutely.
for adults to be able to talk about that with kids at appropriate times, and the appropriate times to start talking about dating issues is middle school, when peer relationships are more important than they ever will be in our lifetime. Like if we graph the importance of friends from
Mm-hmm.
birth to death, we're going to see whoop, and at that height is middle school. Middle school
Okay.
and early high school, we have more friends than we will ever have during that
True.
time,
Truly.
right? It's so important to try on lots of different relationships and see who we are. That's when we need to start talking about dating. And we should really teach kids how to date in appropriate stages. And those stages are going to look like, first, supervised activities. And this is where adults can come in,
Yeah.
is that kids should have supervised activities with adults from about 11 to 14. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's always an adult eye watching, not to hover or control, but to provide good boundaries and rules
Right.
and limits. Because between 11 and 14, a teenager's limbic system is fully formed. This is the emotional novelty seeking part of the brain. This is the accelerator, not the brake. So supervision is still really important, chaperoning, things like that.
Okay.
And then when we get to anywhere between 12 and 15, depending upon a kid's emotional, crystallized intelligence level, we
Mm-hmm.
can start group dating where kids actually don't have as much supervision, and they're in little groups of kids that get to go to the movies or slumber parties or things like that together, where
Right.
there are dating opportunities so that kids can practice those things, but still being picked up and guided by parental figures, coaches, chaperone figures.
Right.
And
Right.
then we see one-on-one dating really starting at around 15, 16.
Okay.
But here is something that young people really need to understand, is that kids who date one-on-one younger than that, they put themselves at higher risk. Early daters who start between like 11 and 13, they have more academic problems, social emotional problems, and behavioral problems. It's just too young to have that kind of responsibility and to be able to accurately predict negative risks. And so those young early daters, unfortunately, have a lot of negative events that happen way too young before their frontal lobe can process that. And so if adults know, let's postpone this and let's do this in stages so that you can learn how to show up in a mature way,
Mm-hmm.
then we really scaffold these experiences for them and reduce risky negative events.
That's interesting. Do you think, if you start dating too early, before you've developed all of the tools that you need to navigate in a healthy way, um, is there a thought that the trauma from adverse experiences, when they start to not be aligned with, behavior that's appropriate for school and things like that, that that kind of trauma makes unhealthy relationships later in life feel familiar and normal. And so, when I think about even my own relationships or talking to other women, and they stay, and you never really identify, like, what, you can be like, what are you doing, like, why are you going through that? But for them it's like, what do you mean, like, this is a relationship, and they normalize that. Is that what that sets the baseline for if it happens too soon?
Absolutely. It templates what a relationship is supposed to look like. And if it has power and control within it, and if that has been modeled and allowed, and the younger that somebody starts engaging in it, it can affect self worth, self esteem. When you are controlled by someone, you start to acquiesce that control and think it's normal and become very submissive. But that can have a really negative effect on your self worth. If
Right.
you start to think of yourself as an object that can be directed instead of
Mhm.
an equal human that needs to be respected, it definitely creates a negative template for every relationship to go. And we can really look at this later on as well. We see that the divorce rate for first marriages is 52%, and the divorce rate for second marriages is 75%.
Wow.
So, what are we doing? We are getting into relationships without a really good idea of what we want, without a lot of really healthy boundaries. And then it doesn't work out. And we
Right.
make some good decisions to get out of it. But then we haven't changed the template. We haven't learned new wiring in our brain for how we think and feel about ourselves and what we want and deserves in a relationship. And then we marry kind of the same issues
Yes,
again.
indeed.
Yes.
You, you said something interesting earlier when you mentioned what you value. And a lot of people don't, they haven't identified the things that um that they value. So when you ask a question like, what are the things that you value in a relationship, and people start to draw a blank. And so when someone else shows up with their values, right? And it's kind of like, they're controlling me, but you haven't identified the things that are important to you. And being a young person, having to even navigate the things that adults can't even articulate.
No,
Oh my gosh. Like,
it's
I don't know.
amazing. Some
Yeah.
of the things that when I'm working with a younger client or even an older client who has gotten a divorce or out of a relationship and they're like, "Oh my God, what how do I find someone?" The first thing to do is write down a description of what you want. So I always give them a writing prompt. Mr. or Mrs. Wright, if you should show up in my world, here's what I want you to bring.
Oh, that's
And
nice.
right, exactly. It's a great writing prompt to describe your perfect mate. Now, of course, we're not going to get perfection, but if we can
Right.
get like above 89%, right?
Hmm.
These are all, those little things that are different we can learn how to live with. But you first have to figure out, okay, what do I want? How do I
Absolutely.
want that person to show up? What am I
Right.
worth? What am I valuable about? And then we have to, so if we can do that with young people, when we're starting to date, those supervised activities and group activities, and then
Yes.
teach kids, okay, what is your template that you want in a partner? Because what I see a lot happening is that young people get attention from someone and it spikes the dopamine.
Oh,
Woo!
yeah.
Spikes the dopamine. And so in this chapter and the adult chapter two, we have a really cool, it's actually in the second chapter. Chapter 12 is all about risky sexual behavior.
Oh,
And Alicia Yasmin is the intern for that chapter.
very
But
nice.
there's a little graph right here. The
Okay.
red shows dopamine spiking within the first 3 months of a relationship. The green shows oxytocin spiking. Now, oxytocin is the bonding chemical, but
Hmm.
oxytocin rises just a little bit in the beginning of a relationship, and it keeps going if we have the following: compatibility, trust, authenticity, attachment, acceptance, bonding. If we cultivate those things in a relationship, the oxytocin goes straight up, and it then surpasses the dopamine, which
Oh, wow.
once dopamine does its job, which brings us together in very
Right.
hot, steamy ways, that always goes down. But the oxytocin creates bonding, this connection between people. But if there is no compatibility, trust, authenticity, that green line would go straight
Go down.
down.
Yeah.
And then we know that's not going to be the relationship for us.
Right.
But a lot of kids, they get that initial dopamine spike and they think that means they're the one.
You know, it's funny. I have a niece. She is 15 years old, and she came to visit me last summer, and she was telling me about this little boy that she's so enamored about. And they were having a little tiff, and she's just like, being in a teen relationship is just like being married. I'm like, no, it's not. I'm like, what? And so then I caught myself because I was like, oh, she's having a moment. So let her have her, emotional thing. But I'm like, girl, like being married, I don't know. She's way past where the dopamines are set in. She is somewhere else
Like,
with
yeah,
it.
she's negotiating an adult relationship at that point. Okay, but I don't mean to minimize her experience, but think about this. When we were little, like in elementary school, what did we play? We played pretend. What did we play? We pretended house. You're the mom, you're the dad.
Right,
Like we pretend.
right,
And so what she's doing is so critical. She's trying on adult relationships. She's trying on marriage in her
right,
mind. And
right.
that's awesome because if she knows there's that much at stake, she's going to start to develop her values. Well, what do I want in a marriage? I mean, this is kind of like a marriage right now. Is this what I want?
Gotcha.
Right? Yeah. So to be able to reflect to her, that's amazing that you're trying this on, not pretending, but you're trying this on. Is it up to the standard that you would want it to be to actually marry this person? Those are the questions that adults can ask teenagers.
And that is so good when we think about, how our trusted adults show up, right? Because for her, I was the trusted adult, and immediately I'm like, what are you? What? But that would have been a great question, right? Like if you feel like this is what a marriage is, does this meet your standards?
Yep.
That is so, so good. So,
Hey, yeah, sometimes we tend to want to like criticize or shame or minimize their experience, but these are the firsts for them. You know, they
right,
get so their brain is so sensitive to dopamine, way more sensitive than an adult's.
right.
We habituate. We've been there. We've done that. We actually have experience. They don't yet. And when we minimize their experience or even make fun of their experience, then it makes for a shaming instead of a learning environment.
Right, right. So with that, when we think about power control, we often focus on the person causing harm. But can emotional regulation or difficulty regulating emotions play a role in unhealthy relationship
Oh,
dynamics?
definitely. I mean, when you have so much dopamine surging, and if you're a kiddo whose family environment is not producing enough bonding chemicals, right? Oxytocin, then to regulate heightened emotions when you, again, like I mean, going back to a 15-year-old who's got 40% of their ability to regulate emotions. Emotion regulation is a higher level executive functioning skill that doesn't completely peak until about 25. And so if you are craving and susceptible to those really intense relational moments, it is going to be very difficult to regulate that emotion. And when you're rejected, oh my God, being
Mm,
rejected at that age, it's
right.
so painful. I mean, I've
Okay.
watched young men in particular uh, be so dejected and depressed from their first breakup that they considered suicide because it was so painful. So, the ability to regulate emotions and heal from breakups is really it's a skill. So, actually, in this chapter, she has a really cool little, there's a little sticky note right here that has the breakup
Oh,
ritual. So let me just read this really quick.
oh,
Num-
please.
Number one, your breakup ritual. You should feel all your feelings, sob, be angry, wallow if you need to. Write a list of everything you loved about that relationship. Write a list of everything you hated about that relationship. Resist looking at your ex partner's social media. Don't stalk. Talk about it until you are blue in the face. Feel, cry, bargain, be angry or grieve, Netflix, lots of binging. Avoid rebounds because they usually hurt both parties. Exercise to sweat out the feels. Box up all their stuff, delete their pictures, resist texting them back if they reach out, and repeat. Feel, cry, heal, accept.
I so love that. And when I tell you at my big age, I'm all of those things.
All of those things, right? The first time, though, do you remember the first rejection? Oh, so painful.
You know what? My mom was so strict. I didn't I didn't date until I got to college. Like I'm serious. I didn't date till I got to college. So
But
I
Saran,
do
that was probably
remember.
for your benefit, right? Because you had a fully formed front, or maybe 85% of your
Yeah.
frontal lobe, so you could regulate your emotions and deal with it differently.
Yeah, but that first heartbreak, yeah, I was like, oh yeah, I almost lost my breath. Like, so when we're talking about youth, how do we help them, just young people, distinguish between having these big emotion and then using those emotions to control another person, right? Because we think if we're so sad that, perhaps I can persuade you to be a better person to me, or to stay in a relationship with me, right? How do we help them to distinguish, like, having those emotions? Like, it's okay for you to be angry, it's okay for you to be sad, but it's not okay for you try to use those same emotions to manipulate me or to make me act in a way that is in alignment with how you feel.
Sure. And there's two sides of the coin. The first side of the coin is to understand it's not okay to take somebody emotionally hostage. It's not
Mm,
okay to say, if you break up with me, I will kill myself. It's not okay to
yeah,
say, well, I need you to change everything about how you react to me because I don't like how you're reacting to me. So there's one thing is to own that that's not okay
right,
and to know when you're doing it. The other side of that coin is radical acceptance, is learning how to radically accept this is how this person is. I'm working with a young couple right now who they're college age and they're in their first big relationship about a year and a half in, which is when all the kind of right troubles really begin because you really feel so comfortable being who you are around that person,
right,
and the one party just wants to spontaneously hang out whenever, and the other party is a planner. And when there are not plans on the calendar, she feels hurt and rejected. And he just wants to go play it by ear, whether that's with
right,
her or not with her.
right.
And these are things that are not going to change about either one of them.
Okay,
And so that way we need to learn very good negotiation skills and meet
right.
in the middle, right? Can we plan
Yes,
half the time? Can we do spontaneous the other half of the time? And if we know
right,
what day it is, which is not very spontaneous, but it is the compromise that we start to learn about. So, two sides of the coin, making sure that you know what emotional hostage taking manipulation looks like, own it, and then learn how to be assertive with what you want and radically accept your partner. And I have to say, it is all in the I statement because I hear a lot of young people using way too many words. When we use 5 run-on sentences, that is bordering on emotional manipulation. But an I statement is simply I fill blank when you blank, and I would appreciate if you would blank instead. Really, really, really simple.
I like
But
them.
also knowing that just because you put it in a beautiful, perfect I statement, you still may not get it.
That I learned that a while back, where because sometimes a lot of what's making us unhappy is because we're pointing fingers and putting the blame on the other person. And when you start with the you, automatically they're on the defense. And now you're having an argument and you're not being able to express how you feel. So if you say, I feel,
Yep.
right?
Yes.
Um, it lands differently, right? And it
Very
invites
much.
conversation.
It
So that
does.
is beautiful. All right, so we have a few minutes left in the conversation. Um, I do want to talk more about your work, but I want to close out with this question. If we shifted our focus from simply telling you young people about what to avoid to intentionally teaching emotional regulation, like you discussed, healthy communication, also discuss conflict resolution, consent, how do you think that could change the next generation's relationships?
Oh, I think it would increase the amount of respect that we have for each other and the radical acceptance of someone else's differences. Could you imagine if young people, before they started dating, wrote down their values, that what they wanted in a friend, in a boyfriend,
Yes.
in a girlfriend, and then they actually heard other people's? I think it would increase the respect that we have for somebody else's requirements and desires. I think something that could also help is understanding what sexuality means to you. Because we
Mm,
see so many young people learning about sexuality on triple X websites, seeing the relationships on those websites and those videos is not an actual example of a relationship,
right.
and many of them are violent and
Hmm.
make it seem that both parties want that violence.
Right.
And so then, young people get into relationships, they end up having sex or doing things that they regret later.
Hmm.
They're too soon in the dopamine stage. They don't really know if they're compatible or they trust someone. So to help young people slow down, which is so hard to do when dopamine is rushing and we have 40% of our impulse control,
Right.
40% of our emotion regulation. So but I think if young people were able to explore what they want and what they need sooner,
Right.
it may help them make healthier choices for themselves and reduce adverse events.
When you were talking, especially when you mentioned like your college age clients, a lot of times, like when we're having these conversations, like there's always like a way to work it out. Sometimes the revelation is you don't need to be in this situation, right? Like, oh, he wants to plan, he wants to be spontaneous. I want to plan. Maybe you compromise or maybe you don't. Maybe you find someone who is more in alignment with, the life that you prefer. This is so good. There are so many key takeaways. I hope everyone watching has learned something or heard something that maybe you haven't considered, right? To help shape the way you approach the young people in your life. Because I know for sure that I could have handled that conversation with my niece a little bit differently. But in the work that we do, when we discuss power and control, understanding the why will lend to more patience, right? Better communications and developing strategies that give kids a safer space
Definitely.
um, to share. I want to invite all of you to check out Dr. Collier's website. You can visit it at www.drcrystalcollier.com. I'll put that in the comments. It reads drcrystalcollier.com.
And make sure you go to knowyourneuro.org because there are videos available that have a lot of this information.
And please follow Dr. Collier. Um, it's Know Your Neuro is your Instagram at, correct?
Just say know your neuro.
Just say Know Your Neuro. So I'll also put that in the comments for more resources in Nevada that's in alignment with this work. So this is, I felt like it was so important to have this conversation with you because this speaks to power and control and violence among our young people and our community at large in a way that we could talk about a lot more, right? We have Nevada Essentials for Childhood in Nevada. Their website is www.nv like Victor, E like Edward, F like Frank, C like Charlie.org. And then we have Nevada 988 for mental health and emotional support, Nevada 211 for connections to local community resources. Now, is there anything else you want to share? You have so many wonderful things going on. You mentioned your books with these great adolescents who have done an amazing job with just what you shared. What else before we say bye-bye?
Well, I just want everybody to know that all the royalties of the sale of the kids' books, the teen guide, the parent guide, they all go to my nonprofit, Know Your Neuro, to make sure that all of those amazing resources are free to anyone. And for young people who would like to do an internship with me, they can go to the student page and fill out an application.
That is so wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your amazing work. And if there's any way that we can support and uplift what you have going on, please always reach out. I am so happy to work with you and partner.
Thank you. Thank you, Saran. It's been an honor.
Absolutely. Thank you all for joining us. Have a wonderful day.